As Crop stood anxiously in the bustling cafe, his eyes fixed on the door, the nervous K9, Tina, finally appeared, led by the handler. His heart raced. Would she remember him after all this time? He reached slowly into his bag, pulled out an object that might reignite her memory, and braced himself for her reaction. What happened next was shocking and would change everything. Crop's heart thudded against his chest as he caught the first glimpse of Tina approaching with the handler from K9 Hero Haven. The moment was thick with anticipation. He had waited weeks for this reunion, each day stretching longer than the last. Now, seated at the corner of the restaurant, the world around him faded into a blur. Forks clinked and whispers of conversation floated in the background, unregistered. His gaze locked onto Tina. Her coat, though slightly less lustrous than he remembered, still carried the majestic sheen of a well-trained military canine. However, her eyes, those sharp, perceptive tools, didn't dart towards him with recognition. Instead, they scanned the room cautiously, betraying a nervous tension in her posture. "Tina," Crop whispered, his voice steady despite the jitters that shook his hands. He crouched to her level as she approached, trying to mask his trembling fingers. Her ears twitched at the sound of her name, a subtle reaction, but her eyes, those deep wells of knowing, glanced past him as if he were just another stranger. He tried again, his voice a notch firmer. "Hi, buddy." Still, no spark of recognition lit her gaze. The handler, a kindly woman with a reassuring smile, gave a slight nod towards Crop, encouraging yet somber. The disconnect was palpable. Crop felt a squeeze in his chest, tighter than the grip of any enemy he'd faced in the field. This was Tina, his companion, the dog who had been his shadow in countless missions, his protector. They had shared a bond forged under fire, unbreakable, he had believed. Yet here she was, standing aloof, her body language reserved and wary. "Maybe it will take some time," the handler murmured softly, catching Crop's eye as he grappled with the sting of being unremembered. "There are times when all it takes is a familiar trigger." Crop nodded, clinging to that sliver of hope. But as he looked back at Tina, her cautious steps backward, the absence of joy in her recognition, he couldn't help but wonder. What if that bond had been lost to the ravages of time and distance? What if the war had erased him from her memory as surely as it had scarred their lives? Determined not to concede to the cold wedge of forgetfulness, Crop reached out again, his hand hovering before he tentatively brushed Tina's head. "It's me, Crop, your friend," he said, his voice a blend of hope and desperation. Tina's response was minimal, her body stiffening slightly as if the touch was a foreign concept. She sniffed the air around Crop, her movements hesitant and restrained, yet she didn't step closer. The restaurant seemed to shrink around him, the walls closing in as he witnessed the absence of recognition in Tina's eyes. The murmurs of other diners, the clinking of dishes, all faded into a backdrop to the silent drama unfolding at the small, secluded table. Crop's mind raced with memories, of missions fraught with danger, of quiet moments when Tina had been his only solace. "Remember the nights just outside Kabul? It was just you and me, buddy," Crop murmured, half to Tina, half to himself, clinging to the past with each word. Each memory he recounted felt like a plea, a call back to something precious that might be lost forever. The handler watched with a mix of empathy and helplessness, witnessing the struggle between man and dog, past comrades who now seemed like strangers. "She might still come around," she offered gently, trying to stitch hope into the heavy fabric of the moment. "Sometimes it's just the right trigger." His heart laden with a cocktail of hope and dread, Crop made one last attempt. His hand retreated into the heavy canvas of his backpack, rummaging through the contents that smelled of dust and old memories. His fingers wrapped around the fabric, rough and worn, a familiar texture that brought back a flood of emotions. Pulling out a faded, used military jacket, Crop held it up. The jacket was marked with the scars of their shared history, stains and scratches from the rugged terrains they had navigated together. "Look, Tina, it's the jacket. Our jacket," he said, his voice breaking as he unfolded the garment, holding it out towards her. Tina's nose twitched, and her ears perked up slightly as the old, familiar scent wafted towards her. Her gaze shifted, momentarily catching Crop's eye, a flicker of the past perhaps igniting in her mind. The room, the people, the whole world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the magic of memory to do its work. As Crop held the jacket out, the fabric fluttering slightly in the gentle breeze of the restaurant's air conditioning, a visible change began to manifest in Tina. Her nostrils flared as she caught more of the scent, her body inching forward with tentative steps. The jacket, imbued with the essence of countless days spent side by side in the field, seemed to whisper to her, a silent siren call to the depths of her memory. Crop watched, his heart pounding in sync with each subtle shift in Tina's posture. "That's it, girl. Do you remember this?" he urged softly, his voice laced with hope and fear. The jacket still bore the gritty reality of their past, a testament to the trials they had endured together. It held the dust of foreign lands and the residue of rainy nights spent under the stars, guarding one another against the unseen dangers of the dark. Tina's ears perked up as she took a hesitant sniff at the jacket, her eyes narrowing as if trying to place the familiar scent that tickled her memory. She moved closer, her tail, which had been still until now, beginning to sway slowly. With each sniff, her demeanor softened, the layers of confusion and uncertainty peeling away as the fragrance of the past filled her senses. The handler stood by, a soft smile playing on her lips as she watched the unfolding scene. She exchanged a glance with Crop, a glimmer of hope reflected in her eyes. "Seems like she's starting to remember," she whispered, careful not to disrupt the delicate moment of reconnection. Crop's reply was a choked nod, his attention riveted on Tina. He crouched lower, bringing the jacket closer to her level. "It's our jacket, Tina. We've been through so much together with this," he continued, his voice a tender murmur. Each word seemed to draw Tina in further, her movements growing more assured as she pressed her nose into the fabric, her body language shifting from wary to engaged. Her tail wagged more distinctly now, a rhythm picking up as she circled Crop and the jacket, her sniffing more fervent. A spark of the old Tina, the loyal companion who had been by Crop's side through countless patrols and dangers, seemed to flicker back to life. As she rubbed her face against the jacket's cuffs, her actions spoke of a recognition that words could no longer bridge. The bond that had been muted by time and trauma was rekindling, kindled by the potent nostalgia of the jacket. The faint wag of Tina's tail evolved into a vigorous swish as she sniffed and circled the jacket, each movement drawing her closer to Crop. With a sudden burst of recognition, she pressed her face against the fabric, inhaling deeply, the familiar scents clearly unlocking the vault of her memories. Her eyes, once distant and guarded, now shimmered with a dawning awareness. Crop, overwhelmed by the unfolding moment, extended his hand slowly towards Tina. "Yes, Tina, it's me. It's really me," he breathed out, his voice quavering with emotion. The connection that had seemed so tenuous moments ago now surged back with an undeniable force. Tina responded with a gentle whine, her tail wagging unrestrainedly as she closed the distance between them. Her initial cautious approach gave way to an eager engagement. She leaned into Crop, her body language softening, her ears relaxed and her gaze warm. Crop could feel the walls he had built around his heart crumbling down as Tina, his brave and loyal partner, recognized him at last. She nuzzled into his chest, her wet nose pressing against his skin, a gesture so filled with affection and familiarity that it brought tears to his eyes. "Tina, my girl, you remember now, don't you?" Crop murmured, his hands burying into her thick fur, relishing the feel of her once more. The rest of the world faded away as they reconnected, the bond that had been forged in the heat of battle and the quiet moments in between proving unbreakable even by time and distance. The handler stood back, her eyes moist with joy at witnessing such a profound reunion, knowing the deep psychological healing it promised for both man and dog. As Crop and Tina savoured their reunion, The cafe around them continued its hum of activity, oblivious to the emotional gravity at the small table in the corner. But then, in the midst of their joy, Tina's demeanor shifted abruptly. Her body stiffened, and her ears perked up, her head tilting slightly as if picking up a distant, unfamiliar sound. Crop, sensing the change in her, wiped the tears from his eyes and looked at her, confusion etching his features. "What is it, Tina?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. The joy of their reunion was suddenly pierced by a tension that prickled the air around them. Tina's focus was now directed towards the other side of the restaurant, her nose twitching, her eyes narrowing as she sniffed the air with a growing sense of alarm. The festive atmosphere of the cafe seemed to thicken with unease as Tina emitted a low growl, her stance becoming protective, positioning herself between Crop and the perceived threat. Crop's hand instinctively went to her side, feeling the ripple of her muscles readying for action. His gaze followed hers, scanning the room for any sign of danger that had captured Tina's sharp senses. Tina's low growl resonated through the murmur of the cafe as she remained fixated on a distant figure seated alone near the exit. Crop, his emotions swiftly recalibrating from the warmth of reunion to the sharp focus of a veteran, followed her intense gaze. The tranquility of their moment shattered by Tina's alert posture, he felt a familiar surge of adrenaline that once coursed daily through his veins. He whispered to Tina, his voice a soft but firm command, "Stay alert, girl." His eyes narrowed as he observed the man. Something about the stranger's casual demeanor seemed off. His isolation, the way he occasionally glanced around, his hands hidden beneath the table. Crop's instincts, honed through years of military vigilance, tingled with suspicion. Rising cautiously from his seat, Crop maintained a non-threatening stance to avoid alarming the other patrons. Tina, her senses sharp and her body tensed like a coiled spring, moved subtly in sync with Crop. They approached the suspicious man slowly, every step measured, every sense heightened. The cafe's ambient noise faded into a background hum as Crop focused solely on the man, who now appeared to sense their approach. "What is it, girl? What do you see?" Crop murmured to Tina, relying on her enhanced senses to guide him. Tina's growl deepened, her body prepared to spring into action at any moment. Her behavior mirrored the danger signals that Crop had learned to trust implicitly on the battlefield. This was not merely a trained animal reacting. This was a soldier responding to a potential threat. As they drew nearer, the man's behavior shifted subtly. He stiffened, his hand inching towards his jacket. This movement confirmed Crop's fears, propelling him into full alert. Tina, sensing her handler's tension, prepared to react to any threat. Just as they reached a critical distance, the man's hand slipped inside his jacket. Tina's reaction was instantaneous. Her bark, loud and commanding, cut through the cafe's chatter like a siren. Crop, his voice authoritative and loud enough to carry across the room, commanded, "Stay right there!" The cafe fell into a hushed silence, all eyes turning towards the unfolding scene. The suspense was palpable, every patron frozen in place as Crop and Tina confronted the man, who now had to decide his next move with his hand still hidden in his jacket. The cafe, now cloaked in a palpable tension, watched as Crop and Tina held their ground just feet away from the suspicious man. Tina's barks echoed off the walls, sharp and alert, her body rigid and ready. Crop's hand hovered near his side, his posture defensive yet controlled. "Easy, Tina," Crop soothed, his voice firm yet measured to keep her on edge, but not aggressive. His eyes locked onto the man's, which flickered with a hint of surprise and perhaps fear. "Take your hand out of your jacket slowly," Crop commanded, his tone brooking no argument. The man hesitated, his eyes darting around the room, perhaps seeking an escape or gauging the reactions of the other patrons. But with Tina's growls growing deeper, more urgent, he seemed to reconsider. Slowly, his hand emerged from his jacket, revealing a small, plain package clenched in his fist. The room held its breath. Crop eyed the package warily. "Put it on the table, now," he instructed, his words cutting through the thick silence of the cafe. His mind raced, assessing the situation. The package was too small for a conventional weapon, but it could be anything. An explosive device, a threat of some sort, something designed to cause harm. The man complied, setting the package gently on the table. It was nondescript, wrapped crudely in brown paper, its contents a mystery that none in the cafe dared to guess. Tina, her senses still sharp, didn't relax her stance, her eyes fixated on the package as if she could sense the danger within. Krop moved closer, his eyes never leaving the package. "Step back from the table," he directed the man, who now seemed to shrink, the confidence draining from his posture. Krop carefully approached the table, his training taking over, every sense alert for the slightest sign of trouble. Reaching the table, Krop extended his hand slowly towards the package. The cafe remained deathly quiet, every patron fixed on the scene unfolding before them. With a swift, precise movement, Krop unwrapped the package, revealing a small black device with wires, a detonator. The realization hit him like a wave. The threat was real, immediate, and now laid bare on the cafe table. Krop's mind raced through the protocols, the best ways to handle the situation without causing a panic. He needed to secure the device, ensure everyone's safety, and control the situation until the authorities could take over. Tina's growls softened slightly, but her body remained tense, her instincts still on high alert. Krop looked around the room, his gaze stern and commanding. "Everyone, please stay calm and stay seated. We have the situation under control," he announced, hoping his confidence was more convincing than he felt. As Krop guarded the detonator, waiting for the emergency services to arrive, the gravity of what could have unfolded in that cafe hung heavily in the air. The ordinary afternoon had spiraled into a scene straight out of the missions he thought he had left behind. Krop stood firm, Tina by his side, as they faced the threat together, a team once again. As the hushed tension filled the cafe, Krop maintained a vigilant posture while cradling the detonator securely in his hand. His eyes scanned the crowd, ensuring no further threats lurked among the onlookers. Beside him, Tina remained alert, her body taut yet controlled, echoing the readiness that had defined her military training. "Good girl, Tina," Krop whispered, his voice a blend of pride and relief as he carefully isolated the detonator on the table, ensuring it was stable and posed no immediate danger. His mind worked methodically, recalling the procedures for handling explosive devices, even though he was no longer in a war zone, but a local cafe that had suddenly mirrored one. The room remained still, the patrons watching in a mix of awe and fear as Krop, with practiced calm, secured the area around the detonator. He then dialed the emergency services, his voice steady as he reported the situation. "Yes, we have a potential explosive device. It's contained for now, but we need a bomb squad at the location immediately." As they awaited the arrival of the authorities, Krop reflected on the journey that had led him and Tina to this moment. The day had started with uncertainty and fear of loss, fear that Tina might no longer remember him or the bond they once shared. But as they stood together now, a formidable team once again, Krop realized that their connection had not just endured, but was perhaps stronger for having been tested. Tina, once hesitant and distant, now stood by him with a loyalty that was palpable. The way she had reacted to the threat, her instincts sharp and protective, proved that the essence of her training and their shared experiences remained intact. She had not only remembered him, but also her duty, which had once defined her existence. The emergency responders arrived swiftly, taking over the scene with a professional urgency that allowed Krop to finally step back, his role as the immediate guardian over. As the bomb squad secured the detonator, Krop knelt beside Tina, stroking her fur with a gentle hand. "We did good, didn't we, girl?" he mused aloud, a warm smile breaking through the residual tension. Tina responded with a soft nudge against his hand, her eyes meeting his in a silent exchange of trust and mutual respect. In this moment of quiet after the storm, Krop felt a profound gratitude for the second chance they had been given, not just to reunite, but to reaffirm their partnership in such a dramatic way. As the cafe slowly returned to normal and the last of the emergency personnel departed, Crop and Tina sat together, a pair reunited not just by memory, but by the shared adrenaline of a crisis averted. Their journey had been anything but ordinary, marked by battles both external and internal. But as they walked out of the cafe together, their steps were light, their bond unbreakable. This day had shown them, and the world, that some connections are forged too deeply to ever truly break. As Crop and Tina stepped out into the soft glow of the setting sun, their shadows merged on the pavement, a single silhouette of unyielding unity. Today had been a testament to their enduring bond, a bond not just of memory, but of spirit and courage. If you felt moved by Crop and Tina's journey and the unexpected heroism they displayed, let us know in the comments below. Your thoughts and support mean the world to us. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories of bravery and friendship that remind us of the extraordinary connections that can exist between humans and their loyal companions. Join us next time on another adventure that promises to touch your hearts and stir your spirits.